It's very clear. It was actually after October 7th. I said, why are we in Britain so stupid that we allowed people like former Hamas military commander in the West Bank to...
So what Douglas Murray said is really very shocking. My hair stood on end from all that I have heard from him. He talked about how our country is being destroyed. He also brutally humiliated Keir Starmer and his team of idiots who are making disastrous decisions for us and our country. So we move on to the first scene.
It's very clear. It was actually after October 7th. I said, why are we in Britain so stupid that we allowed people like former Hamas military commander in the West Bank to live in London? Why? What did we in Britain get out of allowing terrorists to live in our midst? Why is the former Deputy Prime Minister of Iran, who wrote the book justifying the murder of the British novelist Salman Rushdie...
How is this possible? Upon arrival in the UK, the former Hamas leader continued to work for Hamas. He coordinated the preparation of sabotage in Israel and helped launder money for terrorists in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. On November 2021, our authorities officially added Hamas to the list of banned organizations. Dawala has never been charged in the UK. He rented a house with a garden and garage in North London and lived there with his wife. 56,000 Jews live in Barnet. Dawala House is less than a 10-minute drive from two synagogues.
Why are we so crazy in Britain that we would give sanctuary to people who want our way of life over? And I've still never had a response to that question. I've asked it for many years, and I've written extensively about it, and I still cannot understand how a society can be so insane that it can welcome in people who want to destroy it. But let's park that for a second.
Our government has dealt with the cases of about 12,000 people seeking refugee status without a personal interview. Refugees from Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, and so on just filled out a 10-page questionnaire. It's mind-boggling. This was done in order to reduce the number of asylum applications that have accumulated over the years and are still pending. The number of asylum seekers has soared to record levels. Rishi Sunak promised to halve the number of people who have been waiting for a preliminary decision on asylum for more than 6 months. So earlier, the ministry has repeatedly talked about the benefits and necessity of personal interviews. Therefore, officials have now been accused of introducing new procedures in order for the Prime Minister to keep his promise and not in order to identify persons who have no right to be in the country. So we are not happy with criminals who come to us under the guise of refugees.
The situation in Southport is, as you say, it's a very interesting example of what can happen with social media. I don't care about these agitators like the people you mentioned, let alone Alistair Campbell, who's a fascinating man in the projection that he is able.
I completely agree.
To do. It's extraordinary. He's a very bizarre man. The idea that we need to listen to Alistair Campbell talking about truth in public life is kind of preposterous to me and anyone else with a long-term memory.
So at the end of July, a terrible crime occurred. The perpetrator was an asylum seeker from the Middle East. He broke into a dance class. It turned out to be a 17-year-old boy. The neighbors he lived next to described him an introvert, and his family was described as ordinary and quiet. So as a child, he and his father sang in the church choir. The spread of rumors about the Arab origin of the criminal caused protests. People began throwing stones and bottles at the police standing next to the mosque.
Southport was such a heinous crime in an area where, unfortunately, we've got sort of used to terrorist attacks in some of our major cities. But an appalling, brutal attack like this on the weakest and most vulnerable target is something which so horrifies people that, of course, they scour around looking for people to blame. Now, we'll see when the trial comes up if there were any motivations or, as it were, inspirations for this vile young man who did this.
So the security service have already warned many times about an increase in the level of the terrorist threat. And now the threat is at its highest level since 11th of September 2001. So after the start of the war between Israel and Hamas, actions in support of the Palestinians began to take place in many countries due to Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip. In London, dozens of such rallies were gathered. James Cleverly had previously called on protesters to stop rallies. However, pro-Palestinian groups have decided to continue marching until there is a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip.
But I have to say, having covered a lot of terrorist incidents in my life, one of the things that anyone who's wise knows is just wait, and see who is responsible before you start sounding off. And unfortunately, there's lots of people who don't have the discipline to do that. Some people who in the immediate aftermath of something are just, as I say, scouring for people to blame. I think that there are several lessons to be taken from this, though.
No matter how monstrous it may sound, now criminal diversions do not surprise anyone. Unfortunately, the world, and especially the Europeans, have already become accustomed to attacks. The UK has not been attacked by international terrorism for a long time. However, this does not mean that fanatics were not interested in our country. London is an active participant in the war in Afghanistan and Iraq. The United Kingdom is also a member of the International Coalition Against the Banned Organization. London is taking an active military and political part in the ongoing events in Syria and Iraq. And the United Kingdom is the closest ally of the United States, and criminals have this country as their main target. Political support for Israel is also hated by Islamists. If we talk about terrorism and not about single actions of psychopaths, then this is a collective phenomenon. So a criminal is almost always in touch with a recruiter or an ideologue, and
we do have thousands of people coming illegally all the time and never being returned. And we had net migration of almost 750,000 in the last year of a Conservative government that had promised in election after election to bring immigration, net legal migration, down to 1990s levels. And they didn't. Labour, Conservative, the Liberal Democrats, all in government, promised to bring down net migration and to stop illegal migration.
The UK and the European Union have agreed to jointly combat illegal migration. For both the European Union and the UK, the problem of illegal migration is one of the central ones. On December 2023, the EU countries finally came to an agreement on the reform of migration policy. For London, the main problem is illegal immigrants crossing the English Channel in inflatable boats. Their number has been growing steadily in recent years.
When people say now that my book, The Strange Death of Europe, was prophetic, I say it wasn't prophetic. You didn't need to be a prophet to see the loss of trust in society, the scouring around for people to blame, the much more. You didn't need to be a prophet to see that. You just had to have your eyes open and be willing to say what you saw with them. And too few people were willing to do that. And when you have a situation like Southport, it reminds you that the situation which our politicians have created in Britain is such that you are only one madman's behavior away from having significant civil unrest.
Murray's book was really sensational. Murray told real-life stories, talked with those who accept migrants with open arms, and with those who did not want to see them, talked with the migrants themselves and listened to their stories, i.e., acted as an eyewitness to what was happening and not just an armchair theorist. So Murray wrote about the falling birth rate of the indigenous population of Europe, mass migration, Merkel's disastrous political decision to accept hundreds of thousands of migrants, till the unwillingness of migrants to integrate and the establishment of Sharia law in individual neighborhoods. Why does Europe accept a huge number of migrants? Europe just needs more children, more people, more workers. Cultural diversity is good. You can't just lock yourself in a fortress in today's global world. Murray partly blamed this on the relaxed and sometimes frankly stupid European elite after the Second World War, which for decades cultivated modern values of multiculturalism and fixed on integration at any cost, hammering into the minds of modern Europeans that it was their generation that was responsible for all the bad things. Europe is just exhausted and tired. As a living organism, Europe was born, grew, acted and flourished, but the time has come for aging, dementia and impotence. Europe itself no longer really believes in any values, including religious ones, lulling itself with hopes of technological progress as a panacea for all social problems, and therefore does not really want to defend anything. What do you think about this video? Please share your thoughts in the comments. See you.